Welcome to our session number 3. So this is again compressed down to 10 minutes. If you want the full version, check out my Patreon where you can get access to the full hour with full commentary and all that good stuff. Let's get right into it. What I'm doing right now is breaking off the Cutie portion of the model into its own subtool so that I can work on it and make it all smooth and shiny. For a model, for this portion, the Cutie portion, if I was a smart person, I would do some retopology, take it into Maya, remodel it in a low poly cage, and then bring it out. And that would make it, bring it back into Zbrush, and that would make it super smooth and nice and round. But retopology is super boring to do and super boring to watch. It's kind of like a Zen thing where you kind of just make the loops where you think they should go and put in the polygons, and it's great to have a podcast on in the background or something like that to distract your brain, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to do it all in ZBrush because I don't want to bore you guys to death. So the cuties are fairly simple, so I'm just using a simple sphere to place the eyes, and then I'm going to be using a simple cone to do the horns, because that's basically all a Cutie is a smooth little jelly bean. So, you know, doesn't need any complex geometry or weird creases or anything like that. So this section is deceptively simple, but it takes a while to get the proportions just right, or just right for me. And I like working with a lot of subtools because subtools are kind of like layers in Photoshop, and when I work in Photoshop, I generally have a number of layers for various reasons. Like there's a line art layer, there's an effects layer, there's a flat layer, there's a multiply layer, and a screen layer. So subtools are like 3D layers in ZBrush. So I'll have an eye layer, I'll have a horn layer, and I'll have a Cutie body layer, and that's 3 layers for something that looks super simple. Because frankly it is super simple, but it helps me just keep things separated and keep things organized in my brain. If a model gets way too complex, sometimes I'll group things by, you know, like if it's a helmet, sometimes I'll sculpt it and make all these different subtools, and then when I'm at a point where I know I can, you know, it's finished, then I'll collapse all of those subtools into the helmet, and that'll be my one subtool, so my one layer. And then I'll go onto the body, do the same thing, you know, build up the different armor pieces, and then collapse that into one subtool. So I'll have a helmet subtool and a body subtool. Anyway, the mouth is always a little bit of a problem because when they're corners like this, at the corner of the mouth, it tends to pooch out a little bit in 3D. So I'm trying to figure out a way to avoid that. And I use the clay polish button, which polishes your mesh, but screws up the geometry. So you have to remesh it a little bit. But I like where it's going. I like the cute little crease in the corner of the mouth. So I spent a lot of time here just trying to make sure that I retain that crease while cleaned up some of the other portions of the geometry. Like in the middle of the top lip, there's some weird artifacting going on, but then I zoomed out and looked at it in the context of the rest of the skull, and I was like, no one's gonna notice. And when it gets 3D printed, that part will kind of smooth itself out. So but I might revisit it after I'm done with all this, and I might actually end up going back and retopologizing it in Maya at a later date, because the intent is to do more cuties. So if I have a low res base mesh to work off of, then I can make a whole bunch of different cuties. So this part, I'm going to be breaking off the front and back face, and then working on cleaning those areas up and getting it to a detail level where I think it's enough to move on to the next bits. I'm working with symmetry on all of this cleanup, but eventually when it comes time to do the hardcore detail, I'm going to turn symmetry off and go a little bit nuts. So yeah, that operation there was automatically fill holes, and it looked terrible. So what I did was split the faces into two and filled holes on those individual parts. And then I'm going to combine them back again and remesh them so that they're once again one solid piece, and then start sculpting from there. So it's a very technical operation that's kind of quickly done. But a lot of this stuff in the back you're not going to see. So this is me cleaning up the edges a little bit. What I do is I hide the front faces and pull in the back faces so that there's more of a lip on the edge of these pieces. And I smooth those out a little bit so that it'll look like a piece of bone jointed into another bone when I work on the horns and the cheeks and the rest of it and stuff like that. So, but once again, using very simple brushes, the clay buildup brush, the move brush. Here I use a little bit of the inflate brush, which I don't use that much, so I don't have it docked into my custom menu set, which isn't very custom. There's like, you know, some basic tools down there. Some ZBrush users have like super customized interfaces. So like when you watch them do their stuff, it doesn't even look like ZBrush. They've got stuff all over the place and it's just kind of weird. So I'm very slowly developing my own menu set, but you know, it's still most of the basic stuff, most of the basic layout. I'm not quite there yet at the super customized level. But yeah, so this is working with symmetry on, just pushing and pulling, carving in some big details, big shapes that I think are important. It's good to have a solid base to work your little details off of, and so that's what I'm concentrating here. That's what I'm concentrating on here. Taking a look at what it looks like in the context with the other pieces. Let's see, eventually I start work on the back face and do some redesign with that, because I think I could use some of that. There's some like weird muscle shapes and some bone shapes. The Damien standard brush, or the Dam standard brush, is really great for digging in those creases or cutting in those creases and then pulling out edges. So edges of bone or edges of you know, borders that you want to make look like borders, or you know, if bones are intersecting with each other. The Damien standard brush is great for that. So yeah, lots of dynameshing, lots of pushing, lots of pulling, and here's where I start to fiddle with the back. If you recall from the concept sketch, I didn't actually draw the back of the skull, so most of this is just made up of happy accidents, or just plain old accidents. So I fiddle around with the little bits under the nose and under the brow, build up some stuff, move some stuff around. I'll take a look at it from different angles. Kind of looks like a weird owl man or something. And then the forehead up there, I don't know when I get to it, but there's a lot of area in the forehead that I think could be broken up. So I eventually go back up to the forehead and put in another monster, because that's what the monster cuties are all about. Monsters on monsters on monsters on monsters. So faces within faces and claws and teeth and stuff like that. There it is. So I just rough in the eye area and sketch in some teeth. When I go back to detail that further, I'll probably push that eye shape back so it's recessed a little bit more and more cavernous. So that's as far as I take it for this round. Next time I'm going to move on to maybe the cheek area and the monsters underneath the horns. But I don't want to get too bogged down into the details, because I don't want to finish one section before I move on to the other section. I want them all to have sort of like an even level of detail throughout. So here's a nice render in Keyshot, which is always nice to see what your final product could look like. So if you enjoyed this 10-minute version, you can get the full version at my Patreon, the full hour with the full commentary of me screwing things up and just making things up as I go along. Yeah, thanks for checking this out. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll check you next time. All right, bye.